Yeah, welcome everyone to Light Channel Denmark. In Matthew 24:14, it says, "And this gospel of all the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come." The greatest task and the greatest joy for us Christians is to share what God has been doing in our lives. And most of us are missionaries where we live, but some people, they are choosing to go to other countries. And today we are so blessed having Vivien Samsing with us. Has been a missionary now in Bolivia for 1.5 years. And in Proverbs 22:6, it says, "Train up a child in the way he shall go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." And Vivien, she did not go to Bolivia by herself. She had her 3 children with her. And what have they experienced there in Bolivia? It has been a new culture. It has been new food probably. It has been a new language. They had to learn Spanish in just a few weeks. Insect spice, how did they cope with all these things? How dependent have they been on the Lord? What have God been teaching them down there? How have God used them to help other people? In Luke 22:35, it says, "Then Jesus asked them, 'When I sent you without purse, bag, or sandals, did you lack anything?' 'Nothing,' they answered." And my question to Vivian is, did she experience the same? I know she didn't get anything paid. Did she lack anything? Let's pray. Yes, Father in heaven, we are just so thankful that you have a purpose with each of our lives. We are so thankful that for Vivian, who went out in faith, that you would provide for her, that you would use her, that you will help her and her children. And I pray, Lord, that these experiences will be a big blessing for the children, that they will have that in mind, that they will never will forget, and they will choose to follow you the rest of their lives, as we also pray for Vivian. Thank you that you will be with Vivian now as she's going to share with us. And I pray that it will be a blessing for all the viewers to see that it is very good to share and go as missionaries wherever you want in the world. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hello everyone, my name is Vivien. I'm here in Bolivia now, in Santa Cruz. where we live at the moment with my 3 children, as you can see on the picture. So the first picture is my kids in Norway, the same summer before we went. And the next picture is us here in Bolivia. So I have 3 children. David is my youngest son. He's 12 years old now. He was 10 years old when we left Norway. And Naomi, my second daughter, she's 14. And she was 13 when we left Norway. And my oldest daughter today, she is 16. She was 14 when we left. And so I don't know, but there's a little change in the pictures, the whole environment, everything. And this experience has been very life-changing for us. God has always put in my heart to be a missionary, and I've always been adventurous. So I wasn't surprised that the thought came into my mind that my children and I as a family should go and be missionaries for 1 or 2 years. And because I knew about David Gates and GMI for many years, I decided to contact GMI, and I sent them an email and was very open in their email and wrote about us and if there was any room for us going as a missionary. They invited me to send an application, which I didn't do. I got afraid, cold feet, and comfortable in our life home in Norway. But 1 year later, God again impressed in my heart that we should go out as a missionary family. But this time I wanted to know that it was the God's will and not my own will. So on the next slide, there's some questions that I want to answer. Well, what makes a mother with 3 children decide to go to Bolivia? I had 3 children by myself because their father died, they were passed in August 2013, so it's almost 6 years ago. So it's a huge decision to do that and to go without any other support and to go into the unknown. So I needed to know that there was the will of God, that God was leading us, because if God leads, I will not be afraid. And so I did not choose Bolivia. I believe that God chose Bolivia. And why choose Bolivia? How did you proceed to go out as a missionary? And what did my children think about my decision? So on the next slide, there's kind of a picture that, on the 4th slide, yeah, that picture with the juice and the kind of the decision of becoming a missionary. And God says in his word in Matthew 7 and 8, he says, ask and it shall be given to you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and him that knocketh it shall be opened. And so I knew that when we ask God, God answers. And in this verse, it illustrates very good that to ask is not only it's action, it's something we do. In this Bible text, it's seeking, it's knocking, it's asking, you're doing something. It's not just you're waiting to receive something. And so I wanted to take God's word literally, and I then also walk in the faith. The next Bible verse I chose was from Mark 11. It became very alive to me. about this story about Jesus and his disciples, and what Jesus said to, this is Jesus answering Peter, and he said, and Jesus answering them said unto them, have faith in God, for verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when you pray, believe that you receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:22 and 24. So the next slide is the decision for fasting and praying for God to answer if this was his will. I prayed and I said to God, I will fast and I will pray and I will seek your will if you want us to go as a missionary family, and I will continue fasting and I will continue praying and searching until you answer me. And so I decided to do a juice fast with vegetable and mainly vegetables and fruit juice until God answered me. And God did a lot of miracles in those days. It ended up being 14 days that I fasted, and God answered me very, very clearly. And I had fasted this was the end of our summer vacation, and so part of my fasting days was my vacation and my children's summer vacation, and then I started work and my children started school. And I had fasted for almost 12 days when I knelt down by my bed, and God had, during this time, he had waken me up in the morning. God had spoken me through his words. I would say to Jesus, I don't know what you need to tell me. You need to speak to me through your words. And every morning God did. And so this morning my children were at school, and I knelt down by my bed and I kind of pleaded to God and say, I believe, like you answered the disciples in Mark, we just read, Mark 11, that when I ask, I know you will answer me. But I fasted for 12 days. Can you please answer me now? And I said to God, I will read your word. And I started reading the Psalms, Psalm 1, and I was reading like 30, 40 Psalms. And of the Psalms that how God spoke to me. Because like in Psalm 12, 1 to 3, it says, how long wilt thou forget me, O Lord, forever? How long wilt thou hide thy face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my consider and hear me, O Lord, my God, in mine eyes. And this is what I was asking God. I was asking God to show me. It was like reading my own, and I knew that God would answer me through his word. And I continued reading. Like in Psalm 18, the Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my buckler and the horn of my salvation and my high tower. In Psalm 22:21, save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast heard me. From the horns of thy unicorns I will declare thy name unto my brethren. In the midst of the congregation will I praise thee. And when I was reading these words, I was asking myself these questions. Have you answered me, God? Will you? Why do I read all these promises in your word? And all these promises, all the Psalms I was reading, it was like comforting, like an assurance that God was about to reveal his will. And in the next verse, it says, show me thy ways, O Lord. Teach me thy path. Lead me in thy truth, and teach me, for thou art the God of my salvation. O thee do I wait all the day. Remember, O Lord, thy tender mercies and thy loving kindness, for thy have been ever of old. Remember not the sins of my youth, nor my transgressions. According to the mercy, remember thou me for thy goodness' sake, O Lord. And you know, in the Bible, in my Bible, there under the Bible text, there are links to other Bible verses. And for some reason, God impressed my heart to continue reading in Deuteronomy. And I read Deuteronomy 30 and then all the next chapter, for the rest of the Deuteronomy. And when I was reading these words, it was like God spoke directly to me through these words, saying, "And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessings and the curse, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whither the Lord thy God has driven thee." And when I was reading this, I was asking God, do you say that you are driving me to this other nation? Do you want to take me and lead me as a missionary? And I continue reading verse 2. And shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thine heart and with all thy soul. And I felt that God was not only telling me, but also my children, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither the Lord thy God has scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out unto the utmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it. And he will do thee good, and multiply thee above thy fathers. And the Lord thy God will circumcise thine heart, and the heart of thy seed, to love the Lord thy God with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. And the next, it says in verse 11, it says, "For this commandment which I command thee this day is not hidden from thee, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven, that thou shalt say, Who shall go up for us to heaven and bring it down to us, that we may and do it? Neither is it beyond the sea, that thou shouldest say, Who shall go and hear it and do it? But the word is very nigh unto thee, in thy mouth, in thy heart, that thou mayest do it." All these words, questions I had was very close to me. I had a question I wanted to ask God. Do you want us to go as a missionary? And this was the question. And God was talking to me through these words, saying that these words is very nigh unto thee, in thy mouth, in thy heart, that thou mayest do it. And continue to read in verse 15. "See, I have set before thee this day life and good, and death and evil. In that I command thee in this day to love the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments and his statutes and his judgments, that thou mayest live and multiply, and the Lord thy God shall bless thee in the land whither thou goest to possess it. But if thy heart turn away, so that thou wilt not hear, but shalt be thrown away, and worship other gods, and serve them, I denounce unto you this day that you shall surely perish, and that ye shall not prolong your days upon the land whither thou passest over Jordan to go to possess it. I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both you and thy seed may live, that thou mayest love the Lord thy God, and that thou mayest obey his voice, and that thou mayest cleave unto him, for he is thy life, and the length of thy days, that thou mayest dwell in the land which the Lord sware unto thy father, to Abram, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them. And when I was reading this, I continue reading this, and then you have the next chapter, which is the Song of Moses. I don't remember. I think it's chapter 21, and 30, 31, 32. You have the Song of Moses, which talks about Deuteronomy 32 is the Song of Moses, and in a way, it talks about the secularity that the Israelites, they would fall off the truth, that they would follow other gods. So in our world today, it can talk about the secularity, the worldliness of the church, like his church. And so when I was reading this, I felt a strong like God was leading us to another nation. As I was just reading, he was leading them to another nation, and that they had to obey God's word. They had to go where God was leading them. And then I was reading about all the worldliness in our church, and especially we see that in our country, Norway. My country is a very secular country. Most of the population does not confess to creating God. And I was, and then I was feeling so strongly God was leading us to go to this other nation. And then in Deuteronomy 31, 6 and 7, it reads, "Be strong and of good courage, fear not, nor be afraid of them, for the Lord thy God, he is it that doth go with thee, nor forsake thee." And Moses called unto Joshua and said unto him in the sight of all Israel, "Be strong and of good courage, for thou must go with this people into the land which the Lord has sworn unto their fathers to give them, and thou shalt cause them to inherit it. And the Lord, he is it that doth go before thee. He will be with thee. He will not fail thee, neither forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed." And then we read again, "Thy shoes shall be iron and brass, and as thy days, so shall thy strength be. The eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. And he shall thrust out the enemy from before thee, and shall say, Destroy them." And the next is from Joshua, because when I was reading this, I continued reading the whole book, the end book of Deuteronomy, and I kept reading, starting and of good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. Pass through the host, and command them to prepare your vehicles. For within you shall pass over this Jordan to go in to possess the land which the Lord thy God giveth you to possess it. And so with this, I felt so strongly that God was leading us to be a missionary. And by this time, I had fasted for 12 days, and I haven't even sent the application form. So with this answer, I stepped in faith, and I made an application form to be a volunteer missionary through GMI. And for me, it was very walking in faith. And I knew that God, as Jesus told the disciples, when you ask something, believe that you already have received it. And I think many times in our lives, we ask God for things, and when God answers us, that's when we believe. But in his word, in Mark 11, it says, before you receive it. When you ask for something, believe that you already have it. And 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 so I knew that I asked God for this to answer me if He wanted us to go as a missionary. And this is when God answered me in His Word with all this Bible text in the Psalms, in Deuteronomy and Joshua. I had to believe that this was God's answer to me. But anyway, after a couple of few days, I started to doubt. And I was saying to God, are you sure, God? Are you sure? I was just reading about Moses. Are you sure? Can you please be more specific, God? I need you to be more specific. I need you to answer me more. And I felt ashamed. I felt I was crying like this verse in Mark 9:24. And straight away the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. And this is what I kind of said to God. I know you answered me in your word, but my faith is so weak. Please strengthen me and give me more answers. And so I took a big step in faith, and I sent the application form to GMI. And with that, they wanted reference for my pastor, a friend, and I sent also my mother was reference. And then within a few days, I got an answer. And also in my application, I said that we were willing to go to a Spanish-speaking country to learn Spanish, but we did not speak Spanish. Anyway, in the response letter we got from GMI, it was a woman called Babi. And she wrote that she has sent my application form to Bolivia. So God kind of chose Bolivia. And there was a school in the north of Bolivia. That was all she said. I didn't know where. And that she had sent the application form there, and that I will be contacted by a woman there, because the director at the school did not speak English. And so I haven't stopped fasting, and I begged God for more answers, more security that it was His will. And then a woman called Helen answered me. She and her husband Steve was at that time missionaries at the school, and she answered me and saying that, talked about the school. It was a primary secondary school that my son could attend, and that she and her husband, who was a pilot, was in the project of starting a medical aviation project there. And they did, because she was online course, and so would want to have a midwife she could study under. So for me, this was, when I read her email, I just started crying. I'm a nurse, and I'm also a midwife, and how God so directly kind of gave me the assurance that this place needs a nurse, this place needs a midwife, this is the place I have chosen for you. So if you see on the slide number 9, I think, a few slides back, you can see the slide before that, yeah. There you can see my family, and on that picture there's the lady with the white hair is my mom, and her eyes are so sad, and because this is the picture taken at the airport when we were leaving. And when God answered this prayer that we would go, that was in August, and we left. The picture there is the 3rd of January. So there are a few months, and in between these months, God did a lot of miracles. And I could tell just for hours about those miracles, how God find money for all our expenses, how God helped us fix our papers in the last second. And my daughters got really, really sick. On the picture there, you see my daughter. She's on the picture, you see beside me, and behind, that's Melissa. On the group picture, she got really sick with mononucleosis, and she had fever for 14 days. And I said, this was in Christmas, and I said to God, we cannot go if she's this sick. I had paid my tickets in faith. Without insurance, God had miraculously found a family that could live in our house. God had found a family that could have our dog. Because I said to God, all I have is yours. Nothing that we have on this planet is really ours. Everything belongs to God, and everything that we have is God has given to us, and He can take it away. I said to God, my house is yours, my car is yours, my children are yours, my dog is yours, my cat is yours, my rabbits are yours. And then when all these things are God's, I said to God, so it's your problem to fix it, to find a new owner for all our animals, to find a family that can live in our house. And God did in miraculously ways make all these things happen. He found a family, he found for all our animals, for a house. He found the owner of my car. Someone asked me if he could buy my car before he knew I was selling it. So all these things was miracles, that God was strengthening my faith, that He would also take care of us on our journey there in Bolivia. And so my oldest daughter was really sick, and you can see on that picture she was very pale, and she had fever for 14 days. And I said to God, we cannot go when she's so sick. She lost 5 kilos in 14 days, and she had that fever for 40 degrees. And I said to God, I cannot go if she's this sick. And 3 days before we were leaving, 3 days before that picture, her fever went. And she was without fever, and she started to eat. So there were so many miracles that God did before. And the other picture is from the airplane. The flight was a big flight, and the other picture there are from all the luggage we had. We had a lot of luggage that we were bringing, and books and clothes and equipment. I brought midwifery equipment, and I didn't know if I would have use for it, but God knew that I would. So God led us to Bolivia. And so when you see the map of Bolivia there, and they circled some of them, the cities, the places we've been. And so when we came here, we came to Santa Cruz, which you can see on the next slide. The slide with them. There you can see Santa Cruz. So God led us to Santa Cruz, and where you see the arrows on the top, that's where the school is. There's 2 arrows. One is the border, and the other is actually where the school is located. So it's very close to the border. It's called Guayara Marin. But first, God sent us to Santa Cruz. And so you see some of the pictures from Bolivia. Bolivia is a country located in the western of South Africa, South America. So there's no coastline. And as you can see on these pictures, the nature is very different. You have the highlands with La Paz and Cochabamba, and then you have the Amazonas in the north. So it's a very big difference. And you see one of the rivers there. You see the bus transporting over the river. That's how we travel. We have We had several bus trips we did, both from Santa Cruz to Guayara Marine, and then you travel like a bus like that, and some places you have to cross the river, so that's how you cross the rivers. We had to take this to La Paz, and the picture you see of La Paz is the city where you have the mountain with snow on the top, and beside that there are two pictures of the roads to La Paz, and that was a 36-hour bus trip, without any stop. Well, they stopped for lunch. No, they don't really. So that's the road to La Paz, and that's La Paz. It's a city that is 4,000 meters above sea level. We went there once to do our paperwork. And the other city you see beside the map on the top there, the second picture on the top, is Santa Cruz. You see all the circles, that's how Santa Cruz is. And so we stayed, the other map also you can see the whole South America. So you see Bolivia there is the country, the orange country, and the other map you have on the left, you have Bolivia, and you have square in the route with the red marks is where our trips went. We went from Santa Cruz to Guayara Marine, and then we went from Guayara Marine to La Paz, and we also went to Cochabamba 2 times. And so when we came first time we stayed 1 month in Santa Cruz at Red Avenir, which is the TV station. And so the next pictures you can see our life at the other picture. The first picture you can see is the TV station. We stayed here for 1 month. And yeah, there was a big culture shock for us, leaving Norway in winter in November, coming to Bolivia when there was a summer here. And so we first met a lot of heat, a lot of different food. At the TV station, there's a vegetarian food, but still there's a vegetarian food that's a little different than what we're used to. They eat a lot of plátano, which is the cooking banana. They love it. And took me almost a year to learn to love it. And now I really enjoy it and love it. But in the beginning, I did not. My children still, they're not very fond of it. I never thought I would love it. And my kids, they had friends there at the kitchen playing, and I remember when we were leaving there, a friend, he wrote this message to me on this paper, as you can see. He said, try to give something of yourself to others until it seems there is nothing more of you left to give. And this is kind of how our life was there. And some of these pictures here, you see my kids with some of the missionaries that we went to Guayara, the school. You see the picture down there beside the note. There's my kids eating lunch with some of the other missionaries. Beside David, that's the pilot, Steve Wilson, and her husband, Helen. That was the one that that sent me the letter at the school there for the first time. And then you have other pictures of my kids playing with the families of the children's families there. And the other pictures, they are assumed pictures from the TV station. When we came the first time, you see this blue container, that was the kitchen. Now they've upgraded, the kitchen is really nice, and they do cooking programs. But you see me doing dishes in the kitchen in the container the first time, and then you see my kids, David and Naomi, there in the room that was our home for 1 month. and some friends that we made there. So the majority of the missionaries at the TV station that's called Red Advenir, they speak English. But we started to learn some Spanish here the first month. For me, it was difficult because when I had the opportunity to speak English, I would speak English. And my son David, did not want to learn Spanish at all, and he knew English from school, but he was very embarrassed and shy, and so he hardly spoke English at all. Now he speaks English, and he even dreams in English, and when he talks in his sleep, he speaks English in his sleeps. Some of the other things that met us at the TV station, we got a lot of sick. From the water, from the food, I don't know. We had diarrhea, fever. You see my son there, he's pain. We were drinking charcoal, and you see my daughter's legs there. Her legs were like that for a whole year. It got worse. And I'm so grateful, thankful for God that we did not know that. There was a lot of insect bites, especially in north of Bolivia, in Guaira, where we went, there was a lot. And new animals and creatures that my kids loved. We stayed at the TV station for 1 month to do our residency, our permission to stay. So when we're finished with our paperwork, which takes a long time here in Bolivia, and all the papers were ready to be delivered at the immigration, and we could apply for residency. That's when we went, after 1 month, we went to the north of Bolivia in Guaira. And yeah, you see here, and also you see on the first picture that my daughter is washing her clothes. They had a washing machine at the TV station building, but we started doing some washing by hand, and we didn't know that we were going to be doing a lot of that at Guaira. But mostly we did some washing by machine, but we did also some washing by hand. And you see the food is different. There's my girls there with Becky Gates, and you see the TV station building in the middle, below. And the other picture is me and my son in church, or on the way to church, I think. And the last picture is us in the airplane on our way to Guaira. And Steve Wilson, he's the pilot, and he flew us to the school. So I was very afraid of going. Yeah, that's what you see. And before leaving TV station, before we leaving Guaira, Ramarin, I was really terrified. I would cry at night and just praying to God, and I wouldn't understand how I had the knowledge and the strength of the things that was unknown and was before me. And so I really was afraid. I was terrified. And these texts that God had answered me in Deuteronomy became my promises, God's promises to me. Be strong and of good courage. Fear not be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he is it that does go with thee, and he will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. And the Lord, he is it that does go before thee, and he will be with thee. He will not fail thee, neither forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed. And so with this in my mind, and I still was so afraid, we left to Guaira. So you see the picture of us leaving, and then you see the picture when we arrived. You see my son is quite tired of the flight that took 3 hours by bus. It takes about 24 hours if the road is really good. Coming back here, last time it took us 36 hours. 3 hours by plane is preferable. And so this next picture, you see where we went. We went to Beni, which is the county or the state that we went, and in Guerra Marin we see all in the north. UETID is the school. It stands for Unidad Educativa Technical Industrial Richard Gates School. That's the name of the school, as you see on the signs. And that's the road that you see on the map also. And that's the entrance to the school. And the next slide, you see our home. So this was the house in the middle there. The picture on the middle is very illustrated because no one had lived in our home in a house for 4 months. So you can see that there was kind of overgrown with plants and bushes. And we did a really thorough job of weeding and cutting the plants. And so you can see on the slide, on the picture below, how it turned out really nice. And our house became our house for 1 year, and it's really like a barn. You see on the picture where you see the kitchen, you can see that the wood are not tied together, so there was a lot of air coming through, which was nice because it's very hot there. It's part of the tropical Amazon forest, and but with all these cracks between the wall, you have also all the insects and bugs coming in. And the next slides, you see our house from behind and this back side of the house. Oh, the other. I think there's that. Yes. And you see, being a missionary, you have to improvise and be creative. My kids made this shoe shelf. That's my daughter there in her room. And my other daughter on the backyard of our house, backside of our house, we had there's papaya trees, we had bidiba trees, we had mango trees, and orange trees, mandarin trees, lemon trees. And so this is my daughter. She just climbed the tree to get the papaya. And so we had when we arrived, there was like 2 weeks before the school started. So on the next picture, there's some pictures of the other buildings. The first is the entrance where you have the church on the left, and the other is that's the secondary. That's the school. Yeah, that's actually the school building. And the other picture below on the left is the football place where they play football. And we had the building you see, dorm, and the other is house for family. And then you see the students there. They are making caña juice. Caña is what is it? It's cane sugar. Cane sugar. So at the school they had sugar cane planting, so they made juice for it. And this is also another pictures is from the school building, from the cafeteria, and the toilets of the school. So the school is a missionary school for Bolivian children. It has volunteer missionaries as the staff, working in the kitchen, working in the dormitories with the students, and working with them and teaching them. I was going to be the school. As you see my other picture says, I was going to be the school nurse. On this picture here, you see my daughter in the bakery. The school also have a bakery. They made bread 3 times a week, and they went to 2 different towns to sell the bread. The students would make the bread, and there's a kitchen. All food were prepared on fire, as you see the kitchen outside on the roof, and the other picture is where they serve the food in the cafeteria. So it's about from the kitchen. When we came there, I really thought that I was going to be this project that Helen and Steve, the other missionary family, was starting. But there's always changes in the mission field, and so you have to kind of adjust to the needs that are. And so they asked me to be the school nurse, which I was, and then they asked me if I could teach. So this picture here, the other picture, I think there's one more picture behind. Yeah, the next picture from that is the picture you see first above is the boys' house. That's where they live. That's the dormitory. It's quite different from the Norwegian high school. This is how they live, and they on that picture is actually very nice because they made walls. Before there was no walls. They see that there's some walls. They was going to put showers and toilets, and they had separated the rooms for the missionaries, the men missionaries that lived there also. In the beginning, there was no walls. There was just one big building with one room, and all the missionaries lived, and the boys, they lived there, the male missionaries. And they didn't have any showers. They had to shower in the creek, and they only had 2 toilets. So this is an improvement. There's not showers and toilets in this picture, but they have the walls, so they can put it there. The other pictures are from on the same slide. The other picture, some on the same slide there. It's from the school. You see my son there. He's in one of the pictures in the school. And the other picture of the teacher with the bucket there is that he taught biology. And so we had this project. I had this project with him where we bought a cow's heart and lungs, and so they were teaching about heart and the heart anatomy and physiology. So we bought a cow's heart at the meat market, and they dissected and examined the heart. That was very interesting. And you see the other picture? You see my daughter in town selling bread, and you see worship and Sabbath, worship on Friday night to receive the Sabbath. And there's another picture of the school there and my son, and they're working. So this is a school for Bolivian children and for primary and secondary students. The secondary students are students from years. We had since I was 12 years old. So for 12 and 13 years at the school, and they attend school. It's a school for teaching these children to learn about Jesus. Come from different homes, broken homes. Bolivia is mainly Catholic country. The mainly religion is 76% of the population is Catholic, and then you have Protestantism is like 17%. And then there's 5% which is atheists. So all these kids, they come from different homes, and all of them, a lot of them come from broken homes, which means that they grow up with their grandmother, their aunt, and they've experienced abuse and difficult things. and they come from secular families. And so they go to school 4 hours every day, and they work 4 hours every day. So they will have school in the morning, and they will work in the afternoon. The next day they would work in the morning, and they will have school in the afternoon. And the work is very different work. As you see in the slides, they would work in the bakery. As you see on that slide there, they could work in the bakery. They would, that's how you see the picture, that's how they wash their clothes. My kids also had to wash their clothes like in the river, because at the school the only electricity we have is solar panel, and we only have it a few hours a day. And so we bought a washing machine and a stove in Brazil, but we didn't have electricity to use it. So my kids and all the students, they had to wash their clothes in the river and bathe in the river. We had a house with a shower. The students did not have a shower, not the girls did, and the boys did not, but they still had to, they used the creek to bathe and to wash their clothes. There were two different creeks, one for the boys and one for the girls. And so you see the picture, there's the church, and they sell bread. So they had to make the bread and they had to sell it. And the other picture there is some other work that they did. And they had to work in the plantation. They grow yuca, plátano, which is the cooking bananas you see on the picture there, and the caña, pineapple. Caña is cane sugar cane, and pineapple. And they would, if they were making a new area where they would plant, they would, as you see on the pictures below, they're working with a machete, and they would cut the forest with machete. They would have to cut all the trees, everything with a machete, and then with the huge trees, they would go with a chainsaw, and then they would burn everything, and they would have to work when they were burning in the fire. And the other picture there is from the cafeteria. The students also were the ones that were preparing the food. They took turns, so every 6 weeks they would work in the kitchen. They would have school and they would work in the kitchen. And when they working in the kitchen, they would start working 5 o'clock in the morning and work until 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and they would serve lunch, and then they would have school from 1 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The next day they would have school in the morning, and they would have work in the kitchen in the afternoon. And you see on the other slide there, I tried to write how was a typical day. This picture of the girls exercise. I also education physics, so I would do education physics with them. That's you see on the other slide that they were doing exercises. In the morning we had to do that 5:45 in the morning until 6:30. We had exercise, and then you can see my son there. To do for my son, for him to dance. And then I taught health, geography, and biology. And you see me on the picture there that I'm preparing for geography class. It was really challenging for me to prepare for geography. I had to read the book in Spanish and use this Google program to translate it and to teach the students. This course for financially support. So the students didn't have books. We had to teach our students by writing on the board. I made copies because that was the only way I wasn't able to speak good enough Spanish. And you see on the slide there that my health class, we were teaching about the the health keys, and also you see that they made plants with it says the colors of health. So we were teaching about nutrition and the benefits and the benefit of fruits and vegetables, and that was a part of my health class. My health class also taught about new new start, how to use water, exercise, charcoal. All these things were a part of the health class. In the beginning of the year, Helen Wilson, that had been in Bolivia for almost 9 years, she was the health class teacher together with me. And that was a really good blessing because I did not speak Spanish at all, and we did it together. I would speak English, and she would translate, and we did a good health class. And then they had to leave for some reasons to leave back to Canada. And then another teacher, she continued to be my translator in my health class. And at that time, I taught health class with a translator in English. And then that missionary left, and the school had so few teachers that they asked me to teach a health class without a translator, and biology without a translator, and geography without a translator. It was really, really a challenge for me. I didn't know how I could do that. And with the grace of God, we were able to do that. On the previous slide, you see also the staff there. The students had prepared a special day for us. You see the students playing. They really loved playing. And this was the pictures from the Students' Day that all our teachers, we had arranged a really nice day for them with the meals and games and a special supper at night with like a gala supper. So that's a picture from them playing. And on some Sundays that we would play with them. They were really, really, they loved playing, very playful students. And the other next slide, you see worship. Worship was a big part of every day. Every day there was a morning worship and there was an evening worship. And of course, the Sabbath, we had different programs on the Sabbath, and we have youth every Sabbath evening. There was a youth program, and there were different groups that would have the program. The kids, they're very, very, they love to sing, they love to read, and all of them would share the testimonies, all of them would pray, and it's very strong. This not exist. Everyone knew, everyone believed in a creator. They walked around with their Bibles and would pray, and picture with all the special program on spirit they did, and the other is from prayer. And so but the challenges in the missionary field is very different than what I expected. I think maybe when I went out was kind of naive and think that being a missionary is like preaching about God and telling about Jesus, but it's really not. It's just work, a lot of work. You work with people, you work with other missionaries, with children, and being a missionary and sharing the gospel is really living the gospel, and that's what I learned. And yeah, I learned that I come with my culture and I meet this other culture which is so different. And that's why this story in Mark 11 that I shared this text with you in the beginning became very strong for me. Jesus had just I can read them for you, because Jesus had just went out from the Jerusalem, when he had been on this donkey, and everyone had been kind of celebrating Jesus entering the Jerusalem with his donkey, and then Jesus went out to Bethany. And it says here in Mark 11, verse 12, I can read it here for you. And on the morrow, when they were come from Bethany and was hungry, and seeing a fig tree afar of having leaves, he came, if haply he might find anything thereon. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs were not yet. And Jesus answered and said unto it, No man eat fruit of tree hereafter forever. And his disciples heard it. And then the next day, they passed this same tree that Jesus had cursed. And in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. And Peter calling to remember, and said unto him, Master, behold, the fig tree which thou cursest is withered away. And Jesus answering said unto him, Have faith in God. For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatever he saith. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever you desire, when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you shall receive them. And so I think I think that the things that I thought was going to be a challenge was not the biggest challenge. And the things that I was afraid of, God just always showed me that I didn't need to be afraid. Like, I was so intimidated and afraid of going to Guayara Marine, the school that we were going, and how I was able to fulfill all the tasks, and I didn't have the knowledge and all these things. God just showed me that there was nothing to fear. I didn't need to worry, because all the strength, everything that I needed, God provided. And maybe the most challenging thing is to learn not to live with the insects, the different food, the heat, having to wash your own clothes in the river, having to live without electricity, and to eat all this food which is so different, and that's not really the biggest things to. I think that for us the biggest adjustment was the culture and the way of working together. South America is a Catholic country, and people and don't make up their own minds, don't judge for themselves. And I think for me that was the big challenge, working with other missionaries and having a strong mind in being so independent. And I really struggled with understanding other missionaries that mainly came from other countries, from Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, and Bolivia. So it was really difficult to have such a different culture. And I think that's how God really taught me that being a missionary is not only for others, it's also for ourselves. God is taking me and my children on a path of knowing Him, because I was so I was so focused on my culture, my way of thinking, our way of doing it in Europe, that God had to teach me that our culture, that the heavenly culture is so different. And it's not about us fighting over things here, not understanding each other. It's really about God trying to teach us about the heavenly culture, which is so, so different.